Good evening, members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I want to welcome you and our non-member guests who are joining us this evening for Alpha Kappa Alpha's third This Is a Serious Matter virtual forum and town hall, taking our seats at the table. I'm Star Jones, and it is with great honor and humility that I again greet you on behalf of the leadership of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated as your moderator for this evening. Our international president, Dr. Glenda Glover, has asked me to begin tonight's town hall with a moment of silence in honor of the 24th International President of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the beloved Dr. Eva Evans, who made her transition on last evening. Dr. Evans was a lifelong educator and community leader who dedicated herself to improving the lives of others. Please join me now for a moment of silence to honor her memory. Thank you very much. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated is indeed the nation's oldest Greek letter organization established by African-American college women in 1908. We are an organization of nearly 300,000 members with over 1,000 chapters located all over the world. As one of the nation's leading women's organizations, Alpha Kappa Alpha recognizes that Black women's leadership is a front burner topic right now in rooms all across this nation. The facts speak for themselves, and it is a fact that the road to the White House is powered by Black women. Black women are not only the most loyal and reliable voters, we are also the key to igniting Black voters across all demographics to show up in record numbers. Black women's leadership will again be key. So tonight, we are taking our seat at the table. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated is hosting tonight's virtual forum and town hall, featuring for the first time all 8 Alpha Kappa Alpha members of the United States Congress. Tonight, you will hear from California Senator Kamala Harris and United States Representatives Eddie Bernice Johnson, Sheila Jackson Lee, Terry Sewell, Frederica Wilson, Alma Adams, Bonnie Watson Coleman, and Lauren Underwood, all on the topic of how Black women can secure, use, and benefit from taking our seat at the table of leadership, power, and influence. It is great pleasure that I start this evening with a woman who brings intellect, organization, style, and grace to the table of influence. Dr. Glenda Glover, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated International President and the President of Tennessee State University. Dr. Glover is the leader of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, our organization of, as I said, nearly 300,000 members with 1,000 chapters located all over the world, and the oldest Greek letter organization established by African-American college women 110 years ago in 1908. She is a certified public accountant, a licensed attorney, and one of a handful of African-American women to hold a PhD, CPA, JD combination in the United States. She's a bad sister. Professionally, Dr. Glover serves as the president of Tennessee State University, her beloved alma mater, and is the institution's 8th and first woman president. Out of respect and deference, I do always refer to her as Madam Supreme, so it's only fitting that she opened this evening with a welcome to all our members from across the world and our guests who've joined us this evening. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Glenda Glover.
Thank you. It is my honor to welcome you to this Town Hall Serious Matters series. These discussions indeed are serious matters. Thank you for tuning in this evening as we underscore the power of Black women leading in business, education, medicine, law, and as you will see tonight, politics. It is most fitting that tonight we have the esteemed honor of hosting this legislative event as we celebrate the legacy of our 25th International President, Dr. Eva Lois Evans, who convened the very first public policy forum on behalf of Alpha Kappa Alpha in Washington, D.C. Tonight, we are proud to have 8 members of the United States Congress who are members of Alpha Kappa Alpha, that we finally refer to as the AKA delegation. This special delegation consists of the 7 members of Congress and the only African-American woman in the U.S. Senate. We thank them for their service, especially at a time when our nation desperately needs bold, courageous leadership. And if you can describe these public servants using any words, you must start with the words bold and courageous. The civil rights titan John Lewis reminded us, sometimes you have to get into some good trouble. These congressional leaders have represented Alpha Kappa Alpha, their constituents, and this nation exceedingly well, because all of them have been in good trouble, fighting the good fight for justice and equality. I'm happy to greet you tonight on behalf of more than 300,000 members of Alpha Kappa Alpha, and I invite you to join this conversation as we leverage our collective power to support our elected leaders who continue to fight, to agitate, to disturb, and to stand for what is just and what is right and what is fair for all people of color. Good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Glover. Absolutely inspiring. And I actually would love for you to start us out on our topic tonight. What do you think members should be doing to help secure our seat at the table?
I'm going to pass that question, as we discussed, to our famous senator, Senator Kamala Harris.
There you are. So, Dr. Glover, I'll see you a little bit later in the evening.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Glover.
It's now my pleasure to introduce our next presenter. As Dr. Glover said, the Honorable Senator Kamala D. Harris, United States Senator from California, who serves on the Senate Committee on the Budget, Homeland Security, and Governmental Affairs, Federal Spending Oversight and Emergency Management, the Judiciary, and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Senator Harris began her career as a Deputy District Attorney, ultimately becoming the 27th District Attorney of San Francisco and the 32nd Attorney General of California. She's been the junior United States Senator for California since 2017. Senator Harris is also a friend of over 30 years who is one of the smartest, toughest, thoughtful leaders I know. A proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, she was initiated at our beloved Alpha chapter at Howard University. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our sister, Senator Kamala D. Harris, who knows a thing or two about having a seat at the table of leadership, power, and influence. Senator Harris, welcome.
Thank you, Star. It is so wonderful to be with you. And yes, over 30 years of friendship and sisterhood with you. Thank you for bringing us together yet again, because indeed it is a serious matter. What is at stake in particular in this election coming up in November. And so I'm just honored to be with all these incredible leaders. I want to thank Dr. Glover for your constant leadership and just inspiring me and so many of us, and for the work that you do, educating our young leaders, but always participating and being active in terms of the leadership in our country. I'm also extremely honored to be with these most incredible women and leaders of the United States Congress. Alma Adams, we have worked together on Black maternal care. Sheila Jackson Lee has been a champion on everything from equal pay to the criminal justice system. Eddie Bernice Johnson, first nurse elected to Congress. Terry Sewell, first Black woman elected from the state of Alabama to Congress. Frederica Wilson has been charting the course around what we need to do to collectively mentor our Black young men. Bonnie Watson Coleman, first Black woman elected to Congress from New Jersey. Lauren Underwood, first woman, first person of color to represent her district as the youngest Black woman to serve in the United States Congress. And also, Star, I know that Nikema Williams is joining our gathering tonight. She is a state senator from Georgia who will be the next person when we elect her to fill the seat of our dearly departed John Lewis. So I am completely just in awe of the leadership that we have here convened tonight, all members of our most esteemed and beloved sorority. Taking a seat at the table, taking our seats at the table. Well, part of it has to do with this. You know, I strongly believe that no one needs to ask permission to lead. You don't need to ask permission to lead. When you are prepared to lead, just lead. And you don't need anybody's permission to do that. All the young women that I mentor, I tell them that. And take that seat. And then also when at that table, know that often you will be at that table and be the only one like you. You will be the only one that looks like you, the only one that has your background. But part of taking that seat at the table is knowing that when you walk in that room to take that seat, even if you are the only one like you in that room, you carry all of us with you. We are with you in that room when you take that seat at the table. You carry our voices in that room with you. And it is important to always know that when you take that seat at the table, you are never alone. So always be at that table, shoulders back, chin up, speaking your truth and leading. Now, I started my career years ago in elected office running for district attorney in San Francisco. There had never been a woman, there had never been a black person, there had never been a black woman to be DA of any county in a state of 40 million people. And plenty of people told me it was not possible, it couldn't be done. But I didn't listen, because I like to say I eat no for breakfast. And so I started by campaigning with my ironing board. Now you all are looking at me, what are you talking about? I would take my ironing board, put it in my car with all my literature and my posters and a roll of duct tape. And I would go to the local grocery store and I would then open up my ironing board, because you see, it makes an incredible standing desk. And I would put my literature on the ironing board and I would tape my posters on the other side, and I would require people to talk with me as they walked in and out of the grocery store. So part of taking our seat at the table means being creative in terms of knowing what we need to do to actually get in that room and then take that seat. It also means knowing our purpose. And Black women have been leading since the beginning of the founding of this country. And you can look at all the examples who are part of the evening we have tonight. But it has always been about speaking truth. Speaking truth because we know we have no choice. Because we know and have the most at risk when it comes to decisions that are being made, not only about our lives, but about our country. And so I think about taking the seat at the table in a way right now that is about addressing the fact that we are in the midst of 3 crises in America. 2 recent, the pandemic, which is a public health crisis, which is causing Black people in America to contract the virus by 3 times the amount, and dying at twice the amount of white people. It means taking into account that it's having a profound economic impact, which is the 2nd crisis. Included in that is the fact that currently half of Black workers who were working before the pandemic are now unemployed. And what we must do to deal with that, deal with the unemployment, give people relief, and in particular our small minority and Black-owned businesses. And then the 3rd crisis is the crisis that has been plaguing our country for over 400 years, which is systemic racism in America, and what we need to do to address that. And taking our seat at the table then around these issues is about doing the kind of thing that we have, all of us on this call, been doing collectively and together. And it ranges from fighting for to deal with racial disparities around the distribution of things like PPEs and testing and treatment, and making sure that our folks are not left out and last in line. It means dealing with the economic impact, and so we have bills, including my Save Our Street legislation, which is about putting aside billions of dollars specifically for minority-owned businesses to make sure that they get the relief they deserve, knowing that in a lot of the last packages, up to 90% of minority and women-owned businesses did not get the PPP relief. And then the third piece, which we are all as members of the Congressional Black Caucus leading, is what we need to do to reform policing in America and taking our seat at the table to say that enough is enough. We need accountability and consequence when police officers break the rules and break the law. So that's about taking our seat at the table and making sure that when we are there, we speak up, that we are heard, and that we carry all of those voices in that room with us, knowing the shoulders upon which we stand, and then doing the work of being relevant and acting and taking leadership roles and not asking anyone's permission to do it.
Thank you, Senator Harris. You have outlined just perfectly for us some of the things that you and your colleagues in the Congressional Black Caucus are doing to ensure that Black women have a seat at the table of leadership, power, and influence. And women's leadership, power, and influence is on the front burner right now, as you are well aware. Vice President Biden is indeed the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party. What do you think it means to women that the Vice President has told the world of his intent to choose a woman leader as his vice presidential running mate?
I say good for him. It is about time that we have folks who speak, who are attempting to fill the highest position in our land and talk openly and proudly about the need to have equal representation. And I applaud Vice President Biden, who I am working very hard, as we all are, to make sure is the next president of the United States, so we can call him President Biden, to get him elected, because he has values that are reflective of the values that are part of even the founding of our sorority. Our sorority was about and is about nurturing and creating a place to nurture the intelligence and the ambition of Black women. And that is something that has to keep happening, where we applaud the ambition in our girls and our young women and our women. And we encourage them to take on those highest positions, knowing we are going to support them and we are going to lift them up every step of the way. And so, you know, when Vice President Biden made that statement, I thought it was bold and it was necessary, and I applaud it.
You know, it's no secret that your name has been mentioned as a possible pick. I know your background. We all know your stellar credentials. Given the myriad of issues the next administration will no doubtly face, in addition to our amazing village of sisters, Black women bring a lot to the table. So, Senator Harris, I'd just like to say you've been a public servant for a long time, serving as an executive in local, state, and federal capacities. So what has been a part of that village, the AKA sisterhood of women, meant to your career and the way you've approached service to the community?
I mean, from the first days of joining the sorority, along with the 37 other women I was initiated with, and we are still very close to this day, very close to this day. And that was decades ago. I will not say how many decades ago. It has always been about service, to your point, service to all mankind and womankind. And it has been about sisterhood and fellowship and you know, it's back to that point about it is a reminder that you are not alone. It is a reminder that you are a part of a sisterhood that will surround you and lift you up and encourage you and be there for you. And that's what we do for each other. That's what we do. That is part of the spirit, again, of our sorority, which is to say, you will always have a place. You will not be alone, and you will be supported to achieve whatever it is your goal, and we will be here for you. And for me, as somebody who, as all of our sisters tonight on this presentation know, running for office can be extremely difficult. You know, people say, oh, running for office is like being in a marathon. And I say, well, yeah, a marathon where every step of the way people are throwing tomatoes at you. And so, You need to have that place that you can go where people who know you are there to laugh with you, maybe sometimes about the things you shouldn't be laughing about, right? To cry with you, to pray with you, to be angry with you, but that place where you can go where you are not judged and you are loved and encouraged. So as a woman who, as we all are, have run for office, facing those kinds of challenges, facing the kind of competition that you must face to be a Black woman in the United States Congress, to have the sorority as there, as part of who you are, really is a source of not only comfort, but of support, always.
Senator Harris, I really want to thank you for always lifting up Black women, for supporting other women who have run for office and who are thinking about running for office, for feeding the pipeline, and for acknowledging and knowing that there's an entire village of Black women who stand solidly behind not just you, but to all other Black women. So thank you so very much for joining us this evening and being a part of this amazing forum of congressional leadership.
Thank you, Star. And again, thank you for your leadership in bringing us all together. I don't think we've all done a panel together, all of us members of Congress. This is the first time, and what a beautiful sight to look at our sisters who are leading the United States Congress and therefore our country. So thank you. And again, I'm so honored to be with this esteemed group. So thank you.
We strive and we do, Sora.
Yeah, and we
strive and we do. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to introduce our next powerful presenters. Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated has the largest congressional delegation of any Greek letter sorority in the U.S. Congress. We have the only Black woman senator, and we have a group of 7 dynamic take charge congresswomen from across our country who are also members of Alpha Kappa Alpha. It is my pleasure to introduce you to them all this evening, who will be presenting during this forum in order of seniority and then joining their colleagues as a full congressional delegation for our town hall. And so I'm going to start with our dean. The very first question or presentation will go to Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson from the 30th District of Texas, the great state of Texas. Representative Johnson, how are you today, and welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I'm delighted to join you, and it's so good to see all of my colleagues.
And Congresswoman, we're going to stick with the theme right now. What do Black women need to do to secure our seat at the table of leadership, power, and influence?
First of all, if you can do it, take a seat there. And secondly, make sure that other seats are available to all the other qualified women that we can be in touch with. When I think of just seeing us and the international president of this great organization, we should always be at any table that has any influence because we are very prepared women. We have done so much, and what I try my best to do is continue to encourage young women, especially in my field of specialty, which is in the STEM fields. I chair the Science, Space, and Technology Committee and became the first woman to be elected to any office in Texas in 1972, and then became the first woman in the history of Texas to chair a standing committee.
Sorry, Eddie Bernice, let me interrupt you because I need the audience to know that full bio. Yes, currently serving in Texas's 30th Congressional District, elected in 1992, the first registered nurse elected to Congress, formerly served in the Texas State House where you were elected in 1972 in a landslide, the first Black woman to win electoral office from Dallas, Texas, also served for 3 terms in the Texas Senate before being elected to Congress. And in 2010, elected as the first African-American, first female ranking member of the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, and serving on the Committee on Science and Technology as its chair Subcommittee on Energy and Environment, Subcommittee on Research and Science Education, Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, Subcommittee on Aviation, Subcommittee on Railroads, Pipelines, and Hazardous Materials, and the Subcommittee on Water Resources and Environment. Let me just say, bad sister, bad sister, bad sister. Congresswoman, those are your credentials, or as the young people like to say, I just brought the receipts of your leadership and sitting at the table.
Oh, thank you. I'm overwhelmed. But what I've always tried to do is make sure that I get an opportunity and make opportunities for especially other women. And I believe that we all do that. But when I had to think back over the years, I always look for Black women, for witnesses coming before the committees. We have some very accomplished women. And, you know, because I was living in Dallas when Dr. John Kilby developed that chip, the semiconductor, I realized that the Texas Instruments went from a calculator maker company to a worldwide energy behind all of the technology company. And so back in 1974, I passed my first legislation to make sure that women and minorities were introduced and had a part of the preparation that it takes to be a part of leadership. And we've done pretty well. I've worked with Dr. Ruth Simmons, who is a Texan who was president of Brown University for many years. From the day I went to Congress, I included her in my planning. She's now the president of Prairie View, who graduates many of the Black engineers. We have a Black president of the National Association of Black Engineers. We have an international president of Alpha Kappa Alpha, who is president of many women in leadership. And now what we need to be talking about is STEM for the future of not only the nation, of the world. And so it's very important that we especially influence our young women, because that is the brain power. We have got to use all of our brain power. So it's been a pleasure for me to reach out to Black colleges. As a matter of fact, in 2001, I organized a historically Black college caucus. I met with every Black president in the country, and we had lots of sessions on how to prepare for peer review and getting research dollars. And so I continue to work that way to make sure that that knowledge is out there. Every piece of legislation that has come before the Science Committee that I saw an opportunity to put an amendment on it, I put amendments on it to make sure that we had a part of the opportunities offered in the research areas. And now we have many outstanding Black researchers, including women, that are looking at this COVID-19. So really, it's been a pleasure to reach out. And when I think of all of the various women that are in key positions, it makes me proud. There's an AKA, Sarah Runda, who is head of the airports in Houston, Texas, all three of them. And so she's been on my task force. We have a Science, Space, and Technology Task Force that is active all year, but we have an annual legislative conference during the Legislative Conference of Congressional Black Caucus. And transportation, of course, is a part of the STEM fields. We have the national president of Black engineers, who is a Black female. And so we have really tried to make sure that we highlight. We've had Black women astronauts. We've got to push them up and expose them so that our young people can see these great examples that have achieved. And that's what I try my best to do, to stay at the table. I'm not as talkative as some, but I try to do it in my work.
Well, Congresswoman, let me tell you something. You let your actions do the talking. Your work in elevating African-American women's presence in the STEM field is absolutely legendary, and we appreciate all the work that you have done. We're going to continue to talk to you about having your seat at the table of leadership, power, and influence as we go on through this evening. But I thank you again for what you've brought to the table already and how you're helping others get their seat and stay there and scooch over and make room for some other people at the table also. So thank you very much, Congresswoman. At this time, I'm going to introduce our next presenter, and that is the Honorable Sheila Jackson Lee. And Sheila Jackson Lee has served in the United States House of Representatives for Texas 18th Congressional District since 1994. She's currently serving her 13th term in the House. She served on a committee on the Judiciary, the Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Immigration and Border Security, the Committee on Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Infrastructure Protection, and Security Technologies, Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Intelligence, and the Committee on the Budget, which you know is extremely important. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee from the Texas 8th District, welcome. Let's talk about you having your seat at the table and what you're doing to make sure other Black women secure their seats. I think the Congresswoman she's still working. That is exactly.
No, she's on, she's muted.
Okay. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
You can yield to the next one.
I know that you were in the middle of making a presentation on the floor, so you'll let me know when you have completed your work. See, this is why I love working with these women, because they are working all the time, and I'm very happy to give Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee a couple more minutes to get her work done so that she continues to work for us. So we will move to our next presenter, and that would be the Honorable Terry Sewell from the great state of Alabama. Terry Sewell has served as a U.S. representative since 2011 for Alabama's 7th Congressional District, a native of Selma. Terry is a graduate of Princeton University, Harvard Law School, and Oxford University. Before entering politics, she was a securities lawyer for Davis, Polk, and Wardwell. She is the first African-American woman to have been elected to Congress from Alabama. And Representative Sewell currently serves on the House Committee on Ways and Means as the vice chair, Subcommittee on Health, Subcommittee on Human Resources, Committee on Intelligence, Subcommittee on Defense Intelligence and Warfighter Support as the chair, and the Subcommittee on Intelligence, Modernization, and Readiness. Intelligence is her field, and we are so glad to have you talk about Black women having their seat at the table. Representative Sewell.
Thank you so much, Star. I want to acknowledge our international president, Dr. Glenda Glover, and all of my colleagues who are on this esteemed panel. It is an honor to be among the pink and the green as we walk the halls of Congress and the halls of power. I bring you greetings from Alabama's 7th Congressional District. You know, I feel honored to know about Alpha Kappa Alpha because it runs through my veins. My mother is the 18th Southeastern Regional Director, Nancy Gardner Sewell, and she was a wonderful role model when it came to women and having their seat at the table. You see, Nancy was the first African-American woman to be on the city council in the historic Selma, Alabama. So I come from great stock. She is a lifelong member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, as are her 4 sisters and all of the ladies in our family. Literally, there are like 40 of us. So we're pink and green strong. But we also know that it is all about service to all mankind. That my mother taught me very early on, to whom much is given, much is required. But if you are blessed, you must be a blessing to others. We must lift as we climb. And it is especially important that we, as an enduring sisterhood, remember to take our sisters with us. She taught me that very early on. And when I went off to college and there wasn't an AKA chapter, there were no Greek letter organizations at Princeton University, you know, I had to start one.
Of course.
I was pledged as a general member by Zeta 8 Omega chapter during my sophomore break. And when I came back on campus with all the pink and the green, Alpha Kappa Alpha became the first chartered Greek letter sorority on the Princeton University campus. So it's important that we lift time, but it's also really important that we remember from whence we come. And we come from amazing stock in Alpha Kappa Alpha. You know, I rushed to this Zoom meeting, having been on the floor, acknowledging the loss of the civil rights icon, John Robert Lewis, who really fought very hard for equal opportunities and voting rights for this nation. But I am reminded that Martin Luther King couldn't have done his work without our soror, Coretta Scott King, who reminded us that the struggle continues and every generation must fight for the progress that we've made and to continue that progress. And I think that it is important when you're thinking about taking a seat at the table, that you think about the fact that sometimes those seats will be offered to you and sometimes you must take those seats.
That's right.
It's important to remember that you should be the only one at the table. The room where it happens is big enough to include your sisters as well. That is something that my mother taught me, and I think that that's critically important. She also reminded me that you have to define yourself for yourself, because the world will define you by your gender, by your race, by your socioeconomic background, and to whom you belong. And I think that that's what I learned growing up in my household, but also growing up in the Alpha Kappa Alpha family. When I think about my ascension to Congress, I think about the fact that I was a leadership fellow. And as a leadership fellow of Alpha Kappa Alpha, my roommate was Melody Barnes, who went on to be the first White House domestic policy advisor for Barack Obama. And I know that there are so many Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority sisters that really propelled my election to be Alabama's first Black Congresswoman. So we owe it to remember that it's important that we not only open doors, we break down doors, and we also offer seats at the table for our sisters. We can create that as well. And now it's more important than ever that we remember we are a part of a collective. And you know, our success is really our national success. And I think that we saw that in full force and effect when none other than Kamala Harris was running for president of the United States. Our sisterhood is strong, and the only way that it can remain strong is that as we ascend into power, that we lift as we climb.
And I have to tell you, Congresswoman, so you have just outlined the power of the village of Black women, especially Alpha Kappa Alpha, and the manner in which you have utilized the relationship of other Black women to not just move your career along, but the career of other Black women and other women. And a rising tide does in fact lift all boats.
It does.
And your example of what you have just laid out for us is the purest evidence of that, to use a legal phrase, that I could think of. Thank you so. Yes.
It's so important that we remember also that, you know, for me, representing Alabama's 7th district, which is the civil rights district, Birmingham, Montgomery, and Selma, that indeed we do stand on giants. But as Amelia Boynton Robinson would tell, as people came up to her and said, "We stand on your shoulders," she said, "Get off my shoulders. Do your own work. Do your own work." What great advice. We all have a role to play. At some point, we all must stand on our own 2 feet and do our own work. When I think about John Lewis bringing me along, when I think about Eddie Bernice Johnson, who literally, when I first announced that I was going to run for Congress, and I ran in a very crowded field in the state of Alabama that had never elected a woman, let alone a Black woman. It was Eddie Bernice Johnson who grabbed my hand and made sure that I met everyone in the Congressional Black Caucus. She claimed me and she claimed that I would win. And I want to thank you, Eddie Bernice. And I know you know that I sit next to you on the floor. I do because I sit at her feet to learn her knowledge. You know, we should never feel as if we're alone in this, because we aren't. We have so many wonderful role models right in our own sorority who are willing to help us out. We have to just drink deep from their fountain of knowledge. Thank you, Eddie Bernice. I want to thank all of my colleagues because they are the wind beneath my wings as we fight for legislation for our people, but for all the American people. And when I think about the Voting Rights Act and trying to restore the Voting Rights Act, trying to fight for civil rights and the progress that we've made and how elusive it is the ladies that are on this panel that are the first to sign on to bills, that are the first to get others to join me. And that's what it's all about. Thank you, ladies. It's an honor to serve with you.
Thank you so very much, and we're all clapping in our safe environments in this new normal. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. We're going to continue to hear from you a little bit later, also. And I have seen that our Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has joined us, and we thank you so very much, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, from the great state of Texas, and Congresswoman from the 8th District, as I recall.
No, I can't get the
Congresswoman
sound
Lee,
up.
I'm going to say to you what I've asked the other representatives. How have you used your seat at the table of leadership, power, and influence to advance other Black women?
Well, thank you so very much for letting me be part of the sisterhood. What a brilliant idea. And certainly Star Jones is never lacking from brilliant ideas. And let me also claim her as a Houstonian for all of those who are listening. She spent a lot of her life, good parts of her life, with us in Houston, Texas at the University of Houston. She is a star, and the university continues to be excited about her as an alum. I'm equally excited to be joined by my sorors, and always mentioning the fact, and whether or not I exaggerate or not, I always say we're the largest number of members of Congress in a sorority, the mother sorority, which I think the point should be made. Let me acknowledge my president and Basilisk, of course, for her great leadership, the president of Tennessee State, scientist in her own right and multiple talents. I thank her so very much for her service. And of course, stateswoman, I don't call her elder, and that is Eddie Bernice Johnson, who has really accomplished so much, as well as every one of my sorors who we will call their names as the roll is called. I'd like to also say, weren't we proud in the dynamic run of Senator Kamala Harris, and the kind of spirit that she kept, the energized spirit, the spirit of engagement and sisterhood in all of the rough and tough of the presidential campaign. She never saw us and didn't give us a sisterly hug or moment of affection. So I am gratified to be on this, how should I say, this engagement with all of my sorors. Here is my word and message. I heard my soror Sewell indicate that we are in the midst of our tributes to, some of the many tributes to John Robert Lewis, and I've captured his life in these words, the fierceness of now. I translate that to my sorors, I translate that to young women, I translate that to the work that I do, always having younger women as interns or fellows or part of the effort that you are engaged in. So how do you do it? You draw people toward you. You then push them out in the sailboat and tell them that they can sail. Right now, we're in a fierceness of now as we look to make a seismic change for better in 2020. I need not be more clearer. There's going to be a constitutionally dictated presidential election every 4 years. The Constitution says this nation must make its choice of who its leader will be. Well, I want us to reflect back over the last 4 or 5 presidents and look at the cabinets and look at the numbers of individuals who have served. We have had a plethora and a well presence of African American women. But what I say to my sorors now, that there is now a fierceness of now, it is now a recognition in 2020 of the brightness and brilliance of young women, women who are a little bit older than young women, and others who can lead this nation. What I tried to say in my speeches, what I tried to say when I asked them to join efforts that we're engaged in, that they're a part of, whether it's advocating for the empowerment of school children, whether or not it's in the midst of COVID-19 and advocating for more testing, whether we're doing Judiciary Committee work where we had worked on the issues for a long time, even before the heinous killing of George Floyd, the issues of police brutality. We would engage young lawyers in writing the legislation, encouraging them to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Young women lawyers, if I might, and particularly to give them the courage to leap out on their own ideas. And so in my work of public service and the idea of legislative work and community work, I'm always looking for the team of young women that can be part of that. But I always say to them, it is not the back seat you take, it's the front seat you take. So now in 2020, I think as we're poised to elect a new president of the United States, what we want to say is to push all young women in places and space that they can serve and lead, because the government is now opening up for them to be leaders in that. We must not close the door to them. I'm reminded of the women who provided a pathway for Secretary Alexis Herman, another sister in another sorority, but they opened the door for her and we all gathered around it. So the question is making sure that we open those doors, making sure young women are in the forefront, making sure they understand public service is an honorable service, that's my sphere, but as well, the knowledge of justice is important. Let them use their legal talents, let them use their talents to continue to empower and fight for a better life, ending disparities for our community. That's what I think is important. Push them forward, let them know that they can fly.
And I can tell you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, because we've known each other for so very long, that your encouragement of young women from the time I lived in Houston on through even this weekend, you just texting me, making sure that all was well. That's the kind of sisterhood that I'm used to from you. And that's just the way you and all of the congressional members of our sorority have been when it comes to lifting other women up. It's part of your DNA, and I am grateful for our friendship. I am grateful for the longstanding service that you have brought to not just to the sorority, but to our nation and to our world. So thank you very much, and I look forward to continuing this conversation throughout the evening. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Welcome. At this time, I am pleased to now present the Honorable Frederica Wilson. This is the United States Representative from the great state of Florida. Representative Wilson has served in the House since 2011, serving Florida's 24th Congressional District. Former school board member and state legislator, chairs the Education and Labor Committee's Health, Employment, Labor, and Pension Subcommittee. She's a senior member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and a member of the Powerful Steering and Policy Committee. A former Principal of the Year, she is the founder of the 30-year-old 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project, which interrupts the school-to-prison pipeline for boys of color, and leader of the Congressional Bring Back Our Girls initiative to return the Nigerian schoolgirls kidnapped by Boko Haram. Representative Wilson sponsored also the CARES Act measure to provide free COVID-19 testing for all. In other words, this is a representative for all of us. And I am so proud and so pleased to welcome Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. Thank you so much for being here this evening, especially in light of all the issues that are going on in your state and around this world right now during this global pandemic. Speaking of which, that is an example of your leadership at the seat of the table, and a seat at the table of leadership, especially during this very trying time in our country. Congresswoman?
Thank you so much, Star. And thank you to our amazing Supreme Bacheloress for all that she has done. And to all of my colleagues who joined us this evening, it is such a pleasure. I think the only time we've ever gotten together like this, Star, is to take a picture in the Capitol. And I think we did that one time, all of us got together to do that. I want you to call me Congresswoman Frederica Vote From Home Wilson. That's what I want you to call me, because that
Yes,
is
ma'am.
something that we cannot forget, because we know who's in the White House and we have to remember that we have to vote. So I make the people in my district call me Congresswoman Vote From Home, Frederica Wilson. And I want you to know that I believe in education and I believe in scholarships. And when I say scholarships, I mean lifting young people up. So consequently, I have an endowed scholarship in the Education and Advancement Foundation to the tune of almost $70,000, thanks to just putting it there through the years and helping to send young girls to college. And I encourage them to major in the field of education. So I do this on a daily basis. And in Miami, I have a foundation. And that foundation is set up so whenever a soror from Miami has a daughter that graduates from college, they come and work in my foundation until they find a job. And that's as true can be. So now I have watched them grow up. We mentor them and they grow up. They have become everything you can think of. And when I was a school principal, you talking about a seat at the table, all of the teacher assistants in my school, when I hired them, I said, this won't be your last job. So I made sure that they went back to school and took advantage of all the opportunities that our school district gives them to advance their education. They are now principals, assistant principals. One is a deputy superintendent. And let me tell you where I learned all of this. I was taught in the Alpha Kappa Alpha connection under the tutelage of Faye Bryant, Supreme Bachelor's, along with Star. She was right there on the board with me. And I learned how to march with Jesse Jackson, how to advocate, how to make sure that all women, all people, all of our sorors had a seat at the table. And I have been doing that forever. Right now in Miami, I have something called Congresswoman Wilson's Pumps, Pearls, and Politics. This year, it will be moderated by Maxine Waters and Omari Hardwick of Power. And we make sure to encourage young people to run for office so that they can have a seat at the table. And I have a radio show in Miami on Hot 105. And I have begun to invite Black Lives Matter and all of the Black Lives Matter people in Miami. And I guess you've noticed all over the nation, girls, young women and young girls. So I have taken them under my mentorship, and one of them is running for the state house. She's the district director of Black Lives Matter for the state of Florida. And I want her to win because I want her to go to Tallahassee and shake up that dumbest governor we have who's trying to open schools. So we really know that Black women have carried this nation, our community, on their shoulders for generations. Lord, if it had not been for Black women, where would we be today? Nowhere. They have to pay the bills, they take care of the children, they pay the mortgage, they do everything. And God bless the grandmothers of our nation who are raising the great-grands and grands, and all of us are falling under this COVID-19. So all of these grandmothers have school at the kitchen table with children from grades 1 through 12. And that grandmother, we have to lift her up. So in these CARES packages, we make sure, all of us who are here tonight, we make sure that we have enough funding in there to uplift these women who we know have to take care of everybody, all of the families, and we know that. We know that. And the HEROES Act, most of our workforce that I try to cover, and Eddie Bernice and Alma are educators. And we are lifting up, making sure that our schools have enough, that our teachers get enough, that they have PPP before they go back into these schools, and especially in Florida where we are in the pandemic. So I say to all of you, as women, we have played such an important part. And as Alpha, Kappa Alpha women, we should be so proud to be number one and the largest in the nation. And I say to all of you, ski-wee.
I have to tell you, Congresswoman Frederica and I have known each other literally since I was a teenager, and she helped to raise me. I did some of my first speeches for her and with her. And so I just want to it's such a pleasure to be in a position that one of your longtime mentors is still there fighting the fight for other young women. I am a beneficiary of some of the programs that you put in place. I am a beneficiary of programs that a lot of you all put in place. And it's just an honor for me to have the opportunity to share with you on this vital topic of Black women's excellence and what we bring to the table. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. Congresswoman Vote from Home Wilson, okay? I appreciate you. And that's the way I'm going to address you throughout this next season of election. And speaking of mentors, that's our next speaker is the Honorable Bonnie Watson Coleman. She is the United States Representative from New Jersey, which is exactly where I grew up. She has served as the U.S. Representative for New Jersey's 12th Congressional District, which is my actual hometown, since 2015. She previously served in the New Jersey General Assembly. She's the first Black woman in Congress from New Jersey. Bonnie Watson Coleman became the first African-American woman to lead the state party when she was elected chair of the New Jersey Democratic State Committee. And in 2016, she, along with Representative Robin Kelly and Representative Yvette Clarke, founded the Congressional Caucus on Black Women and Girls. Talk about making a dedication to Black women. She serves on the Committee on Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Emergency Preparedness, Response and Communications, Subcommittee on Oversight and Management Efficiency as the ranking member, Subcommittee on Transportation and Public Assets, Committee on Appropriations, United States Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health and Human Services, Education and Related Agencies. Again, talk about a Congresswoman who does not just talk the talk, walks the walk when it comes to elevating other Black women. Congresswoman, welcome. Let's talk about what we're bringing to the table.
Thank you, Star. It's my blessing to be here. I just want to make a point, though, because I thought we were doing this by seniority, and my soror, Alma Adams, has seniority over me. And so
she does, by 1 year. That's by 1 year. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that I should yield to her. It's up to you.
That's the courtesy of sorors. I have to tell you, by 1 year, there is an outranking, and only Alpha Kappa Alpha women will do that for you right away. So that gives me the opportunity to introduce Congresswoman Alma Adams, and then we'll come back to Congresswoman Bonnie Watson, okay? So, Congresswoman Alma Adams from North Carolina, I bookend you both because I was born in North Carolina and raised in New Jersey. Congresswoman Alma Adams is indeed the Congresswoman from where I was born. Represents North Carolina's 12th Congressional District in the United States House of Representatives. She served as a member of North Carolina. She served as a member of North Carolina's General Assembly representing the state's 58th House District in Guilford County from her appointment in April 1994 to her election to Congress. She is only the second woman of color to represent North Carolina in the House and is a member of the Committee on Agriculture as the Vice Chair, Subcommittee on Nutrition, Oversight and Department Operations, Committee on Education and Labor, Subcommittee on Workforce Protection as the Chair, Committee on Financial Services, and the Subcommittee on Diversity and Inclusion. You've been doing this kind of work for a very long time, Congresswoman Alma Adams. So welcome to the table of influence, leadership, and power. Let's talk about what Black women bring to that table.
Thank you so much, Sarah Starr, to our distinguished Madam Supreme, Sarah Dr. Glenda Glover, to all of my Sarahs who have joined us tonight, who I have the pleasure of sitting with them in the U.S. Congress. And I just want to thank my Sarah from New Jersey for yielding. I appreciate that, but I was going to let you go on. But you know, New Jersey was the place where I grew up. So I am very fond of the Garden State. And so Bonnie Watson Coleman and I have maintained a great relationship, as I have with all of my SARs. It is certainly a pleasure for me, not only to represent the 12th Congressional District in North Carolina, and I do bring you greetings from all of the 830,000 citizens that I represent there. But you know, as a Black woman, I show up every day for my Black sisters. That is so important to me, to make sure that my voice and my perspective are both woven into every decision that I make and every word that I speak, whether I'm fighting to make sure that our HBCUs receive the equitable funding, or that Black mothers get the respect and the care they deserve before, during, and after pregnancy. I do just want to pause a moment and thank Sarah Glover, because she and I have been working in this battlefield for a long time. When I came to Congress and jumped into the HBCUs, and I certainly thank all of my Sarahs and even the Congressional Black Caucus for all of the work that they did, and Sarah ABJ. But when we started the bipartisan HBCU caucus, Sarah Glover and I spent many nights talking about what we needed to do. I have a lot of respect for what she is doing, leading the Tennessee state. And I just want to just acknowledge that, because it's because of great women leaders, women of Alpha Kappa Alpha, who have really paved the way for me as well. You know, my mom did not have a seat at the table, but she worked very hard to make sure that there was one provided for me. And she did that because she felt that education would be my pathway. I grew up in the ghetto of Newark, New Jersey, walking those streets. And I'm now able to walk the halls of Congress because my mother, she scrubbed floors every day so that I would have a good education. You know, assuring seats at the table for Black women, I believe, requires our own Black Women Club to rival that good old boys club. And I'm proud to be a part of building that club and having an opportunity to serve in Congress after almost now 35 years of serving from elected office in local office, from the school board, I say from school board to Congress. First Black woman elected to the school board in Greensboro, North Carolina. And now just the second Black woman to represent North Carolina in Congress, but the first one to represent the 12th district, and the only African-American woman from North Carolina in Congress. Now, you know, I always like to remember that Shirley Chisholm reminded us, if there's no seat, we need to bring in a folding chair. And yes, we've been making a lot of good trouble for a long time. And certainly I pay homage to the great civil rights leader and a gentleman who worked so hard to make things so better for us, Congressman John Lewis. who I didn't know as well as some of my colleagues here, because I haven't been in, this is my third term that I'm completing in the Congress, but just to learn from him and to run into him day by day and to stop and have an opportunity to share and talk with him. You know, we're not only as Black women underrepresented, as has my soror said before, we have to work twice as hard. When I ran for this seat, I had was completing or was running to complete an unexpired term. Congressman Mel Watt served for 20 years. And so it was pretty much open, and I ran. There were 6 men running against me. I was the only woman running for the seat, and everybody thought there'd be a runoff. And I guess I might have thought that too, but we didn't have a runoff. I just ran them off, and we're continuing to serve that district. But Black women have always been resilient, tenacious, and optimistic, and we continue to work together to build the power. You know, power is what makes the difference in lives and communities. And the first thing you have to understand about power and how to get it is you don't ask somebody how to get it, where it is, or can you have it. You take it, and once you take it, then you use it. So I think providing that support that we have continued to do, especially through our great sorority, has enabled us to not only secure our seats at the table, but to bring others along. Now, I was proud to be sworn in 2014 to have completed 1 month of the 113th Congress, and I was sworn in as the 100th woman elected to the 113th Congress. Now, we have a long way to go before we elect the 100th Black woman to Congress, and I'm certainly looking forward to that. I'm probably not going to be in the Congress for that period of time, but I do think that certainly it's on its way. I have used my seat to bring attention to the unique issues that impact Black women. I had the privilege of teaching for 40 years, in addition to all of the political work that I've had the privilege of doing and serving so many people. But I served at Bennett College as a professor, as an administrator for 40 years, interacting with and helping Black women. Bennett is the second African-American college for women, Spelman being the first. So it was a wonderful opportunity for me to engage with Black women and to help them and shape them and to mold them into what we know they can be. Black women, of course, we know that I've worked on a number of issues impacting outside of education and HBCUs in particular on issues around Black maternal health, and started the Black Maternal Health Caucus with Representative Underwood, soror Representative Underwood, who you'll hear from a little bit later. We launched that more than a year ago, have more than 100 members now, and I am particularly proud of the coalition. And you mentioned what we heard from Senator soror Harris earlier. She and I have done a lot of work in this area as well. So I'm proud of the coalition of maternal health groups that we've built. We have been intentional about centering those voices and contributions in the work of Black women, and particularly using Black women-led groups. I think that is so very important. And many of us have said that they felt like they had no voice. So I think we have to be the voice for other Black women. And I've tried to use my voice to accentuate their voices as well. Not only in the education committee that I chair, the subcommittee on workforce protections. When we think about what's going on with this virus and this pandemic, so many Black women and Black people are being impacted. We're looking specifically at trying to make sure that that people who are on the front lines, those that we consider to be essential, have the essential things that they need to protect themselves. But also we need to have essential wages. So I've been pushing for that for a long time, but I think as we continue to build these coalitions, that we're going to be able to not only have one seat, but multiple seats, and we're going to be able to advance opportunities for Black women to hold build a bigger table for us. And after a while, we're going to have to put in those little sections on the table to make it bigger, so that we can all have a seat. But I'm just delighted to have my seat in the U.S. Congress, and will continue to do my best to ensure that my voice. I've always said you've got to stand up, you've got to speak up, and sometimes you have to cut up. Done a lot of that over my lifetime, and I don't apologize to anyone for doing it, because we do have to be heard, and oftentimes you have to speak just a little bit louder. But thank you so much. Sarah Starr, you're doing a great job. I have admired your work over the years, and I've got to tell you that your mentor, Sarah Wilson, did a great job. And of course, I certainly applaud you, and again, our marvelous Supreme Bacheloress for all that she's doing for our young men and women at the university, because I'm very, very concerned that with this pandemic, it has created some serious issues for our schools. I want to make sure that every HBCU not only survives, but that we thrive. That is really important to me, because they took me in and helped me to become all that I am today. But thank you very much for this opportunity. And again, I appreciate being here very much.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Adams. I have to tell you, I was writing notes, so forgive me if you missed that part. I was writing notes that said you didn't do a runoff. You didn't need a runoff. You ran them off. So understand that will make it in a speech somewhere, and I appreciate that so much. I will be stealing that, okay?
All right,
we thank you very much for your advocacy. You are the epitome of someone who, if there's not a seat at the table, you bring your own folding chair. You make sure that Black women have that seat at the table, and we thank you so very much. And of course, we will be looking forward to hearing more from you a little bit later. And now I go to my other bookend. My birth was in North Carolina, but my raising was in New Jersey. And so I'm here with the Honorable Sorrel Bonnie Watson Coleman, Congresswoman from New Jersey.
Thank you. Thank you, Sora. Thank you, Sora Star Jones. We do own you. So I just want everyone to know that we had a lion's share of you, because that's where you were raised, and we're proud of you. And to our Supreme Bacheloress, it is an honor to be in your presence. And I am so proud that you are our Supreme Bacheloress. And can I say, I appreciate the fact that you and I are twinning in green tonight, because everyone else seems to have gotten the pink, got the pink memo. I didn't get it. So I serve with these amazing, brilliant women, and you've heard from each one of them. And I could just go down the line really quickly and say, when I think of ALMA, I think of HBCUs and education. When I think of EBJ, I think about science and technology and the space and making sure that we're in space that we've never been in before. When I think of Frederica, I think about the work that she's done for both the Boko Haram girls and for young Black boys and young Black men. And when I think about Sheila Jackson Lee, it's reparations, justice, and reminding Congress of its institution and its history. And of course, when I look at Terry, I think of the Voting Rights Act and the work that she's put in, how dedicated she's been to it. And then our youngin' on the end. Our newbie is a brilliant inquisitor. Don't let her ask you questions, but she's amazing, and she's always standing up for with regard to healthcare, making sure that healthcare is something that we have a right to, and that it is a quality healthcare. My entire life has been in public service. And so from a very young person that started in government, did not think she was going to be there, ended up being there 28 years. Women gravitated to me, and I gravitated to them. And so wherever I went, it was important that I left someone in that office or in that division who was able to move up, who was able to like finish her degree if she needed to, who had the support, who knew that there was someone there that was working on her behalf. I work in an environment right now. We've got these brilliant young AKA women on the Hill. They are just doing magical things to showcase our intelligence, our excellence. They're going to be whatever they want to be, and they're going to probably fill our seats at some point. And then I work in an office where I made sure that we have, I have a couple of AKAs actually that work for me, but that they are in leadership positions and that we give them an opportunity to show what they can do, to be exposed to other members, to be exposed to the institution, to be exposed to the world. Because I think that that's how we help Black women to get to where they're capable of being, but for their opportunity. So I'm living right now in an era where I see so many Black women on television, so many Black women that are mayors, that are lawyers, that are judges, that are holding some kind of office. I serve with a magnificent cohort of women in Congress. Kamala Harris she's just a bad sister. That is an amazing member of the Judiciary Committee who speaks truth to power all the time. I'm proud. I am proud that we serve together, and I am proud that each one of us has a personal relationship because of who we are and because we recognize the importance of the sisterhood. I mean, you think about it. We help each other, for we know no other. That's who we are. That's who we are. I've tried to be as a young person working through the administrations in New Jersey. That's what I've tried to be as a legislator, both on the state level and on the congressional level. And that's what I try to be when Robin and Yvette and I formed the Congressional Caucus on Black Women and Girls, because we wanted to make sure that policy discussions and legislative discussions and any other discussion had an opportunity to see it through the lens of a Black woman. One of my colleagues has spoken about all the great things that are in the HEROES Act and the coronavirus acts that look to lift people and to protect people. And I look at it like, yeah, when we talk about paycheck fairness, when we talk about the stimulus checks, when we talk about the essential workers and the fact that they should be given hazard pay, we are overly represented. Black women are overly represented in those positions and those industries that are on the front lines for us right now. And so when we think about what we need to be doing as Black women in Congress, of course we work for justice for all, for opportunity for all. But we're always constantly reminded, and I hope that people see that the work that we do always takes into consideration the impact that it has on African-American women, as single mothers, as grandmothers who've taken care of their grandchildren, as aunts who stood up and stepped into the need to raise their niece or nephew. We've always been a caring cohort of people, but we've shown them how mighty we are. Everyone knows that no one's going to get elected president of the United States of America without having Black women in their corner. Everyone knows that they're not going to get elected to these respective offices without recognizing the role that we should play. And everyone recognizes that we don't generally ask for ourselves. We ask on behalf of others, but we're demanding that those others are dealt with, are given the opportunities. So I believe that this is an exciting time. Opportunities abound while we're dealing with the economic pandemic, the health pandemic, the social justice, and the law enforcement pandemic, we stand strong. We stand strong and we become the example that others follow in what you can be and what you're expected to do on behalf of your sister and your brother. And so I tell you, I'm tremendously honored to be here with you tonight. This is amazing. I thank you, Star, for just sort of organizing this and having that brilliant brain work in this direction. And of course, Dr. Glover, I am so grateful to you for the leadership and for the example that you represent for all young women. But we're reminded that we must do for others. And I thank you for the opportunity to just share a little bit this evening.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Watson, Bonnie Watson Coleman. I've known you literally my entire life. And it's fair to say one of my great mentors from Trenton, New Jersey area. And I thank you for your leadership as a young woman to right this minute, to right now. And thank you for just your words of wisdom in terms of getting our seats, our rightful seats. Women who are inspiring. This brings us to the last of our Alpha Kappa Alpha delegation, and that would be the Honorable Lauren Underwood, who has been a member of the United States House of Representatives since 2019. Congresswoman Lauren Underwood serves Illinois' 14th Congressional District and was sworn into the 116th U.S. Congress on January 3rd, 2019. Congresswoman Underwood is the first woman, the first person of color, and the first millennial to represent her community in Congress. She is also the youngest African-American woman to serve in the United States House of Representatives. Congresswoman Underwood serves on the House Committee on Education and Labor, the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, and is the vice chair of the House Committee on Homeland Security. Congresswoman Underwood co-founded and co-chairs the Black Maternal Health Caucus, which elevates the Black maternal health crisis within Congress and advances policy solutions to improve maternal health outcomes and end disparities. She uses her expertise and her passion to benefit other women. And I am so proud to call her my sorority sister, my sister. Congresswoman Underwood, take it away.
Well, thank you, Sorority Star. I'm so glad to be with you all. Madam Supreme, what an honor it is to see you again. And I am just delighted to be able to be in this conversation with my colleagues and my friends and my sisters. And, honestly, this is such a challenging time in our country. And to be able to serve in the United States Congress during a global pandemic as the youngest Black woman ever elected to this institution is something that I am just so humbled by and grateful to be able to have a seat at the table. I understand that this is supposed to be about a few words of inspiration for our sorors. And what I would just say is our communities need our leadership. Our communities need our voices. Our communities need to hear from us. And as we are the most, reliable voting bloc in the country, yes, but there are real problems, healthcare problems that we face, problems in the education sector that we face. We are, dying at huge rates due to the coronavirus pandemic. And I think that in this time, we can harness our political power to make sure that we are being represented by individuals that share our values, but also make sure that they are focused on our core needs. And so that's been one of the great joys of my time in Congress, to be honest with you, is to be able to do this work so that we can have healthy lives, live our best lives, live our fullest lives, and for all the moms to be able to survive their delivery and be able to enjoy their time with their children as they're raising them. It's been quite an honor to work with Congresswoman Adams and our Black Maternal Health Caucus. It started as an idea, and I thought it was just going to be the two of us, has grown into this large caucus, over 100 members, bipartisan. We just passed, under the leadership of Robin Kelly, our colleague from Illinois, the first Medicaid expansion since the Affordable Care Act was signed into law in 2010. That is the single most important thing that you could do to save moms' lives in this country, is to expand Medicaid coverage to the full year postpartum. And we got it done in the House with Republican support. And so we're waiting on the Senate at this point. And I'm optimistic. You know, in March, we introduced something called the Black Maternal Health Omnibus Act of 2020. Senator Harris leads it in the Senate, and so many of our SORA delegation have featured leadership roles here in the House on the individual bills. But what this is a comprehensive suite of legislation, identifying gaps and tackling them so that we can save moms' lives, whether we're talking about social determinants of health like transportation and nutrition and housing, or improving data collection, or diversifying our healthcare workforce. We know that there are many opportunities to affect change at a national level and improve the quality of care that Black women, Native women, and other women are receiving across the country. And so, you know, to anybody that's watching, please know that you are strong and you are powerful and you are capable. And if at 30 years old, I can identify a problem with the representation in my community and work hard and run for office and get elected to Congress at 32, you too can make a change in your community. And that's what we do as women of Alpha Kappa Alpha. We are supreme in service to all mankind. And that's at in every level, including the federal level. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Underwood. You are an inspiration to every young woman out there who has thought about running for public office. You have put all of your expertise, all of your experience into working for the people and truly making use of your seat at the table. So thank you. Thank you so very much. I'd like to thank all of our sorority sisters who are the Congresswomen for their presentation, and at this of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority who are going to join us to begin what we consider to be the town hall portion of our program. We are going a little bit long this evening, but something tells me that the audience is full of the information that is going on and coming out. And so I hope that you will stick with us because we are really going to hit some of the issues that impact on the Black community. And I actually will start it out with the first question, but you know, let me first introduce you so you will get to know who's here, the leaders from Alpha Kappa Alpha who are going to participate. Shell Looper Wilson, our International Secretary, Mary Bentley Lamar, the North Atlantic Regional Director, Joy Elaine Daly, International Regional Director, Jennifer King Congleton, Mid-Atlantic Regional Director, Twyla Wood, and Carolyn G. Randolph, the South Atlantic Regional Director, will all participate in this portion of the program. And I will lead off, and this question is going to go to Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson as the Dean of our delegation. And I'm going to put it right out there. I want to address the elephant in the room. Every room that I've been in the past few months, the consensus is that there's a time for a Black woman to be on the presidential ticket. Recent polls supported, specifically 72% of Democrats in a USA Today poll say it's important that Biden picks a woman of color. Congresswoman, what can we do to drive that point home and secure a seat at that ultimate table of leadership, power, and influence? And I address this to Eddie Bernice Johnson. You're muted. I just want to make sure you know. You're muted. Yes.
Thank you. That's a really loaded question that I'm delighted to respond. We do have, we've heard names of many Black women that are qualified. I am not going to be the ones to choose them. I think the person that's going to choose that person is going to be Vice President Biden. I'm going to support whomever he chooses, but I have my choice. I believe that we've got to make sure it's someone who can step right in without much notice and take over. And in the past, the criteria has been someone who's been an executive or a statewide elected official. When I hear that, my mind goes to one person who has been elected twice statewide, who happens to be a Sarah. That's my first choice. And the reason why is because of the outstanding qualifications and the incredible responsibility that that person will be stepping into. I love everybody I have heard. I think they're all great people, but when you get down to the bottom line of what has been used as a criteria in the past, she is the most qualified.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's very clear. And wait, you know, that way, I love it. Congresswoman Bernice Johnson said, and that's it, okay? So that put the cap on it. And I see the other congresswomen that are clapping and showing their support to our dean of the delegation's conversation. We are a nonpartisan organization, and so I do want to recognize that we are talking about Black women leadership and going to the seat of the table. And when you are qualified and capable and confident and ready to serve on day one, that's who should be sitting there, and that's the point. Thank you so much, Congresswoman. And I'm going to now move to my colleagues who are a part of the Alpha Kappa Alpha leadership, and I'll start with Shelley Looper Wilson, our International Secretary, who is going to address her question to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Shelley?
Thank you so much, Star. And again, I do want to echo that we so appreciate you being able to participate here with us this evening and for all of the wonderful and difficult and challenging work that you are doing for us in Washington, D.C. My question is, while the removal of Confederate statues and paintings of murals is a largely symbolic gesture, noting that Black Lives Matter, can you share with us some of the concrete policies that are being proposed to bring those words to life, i.e. challenges to qualified immunity, programs for fair housing, access to education, loans, financial resources, and also how can we as members help amplify the work that you're doing to ensure that these policies can get passed?
Well, first of all, Sarahs, as I'm looking at the landscape of all of you, you look like a bouquet of pink and green. It's always a beautiful picture. And obviously bouquets have a sweet smell and they do things. So you do things. I'm honored to be with you. That is a very important question. And so let me first of all respond to the fact that symbolism goes many ways because sometimes it provokes people to think and move them into action. Let me tell you that the movement of the Confederate statutes in the United States Congress moved the House of Representatives to overwhelmingly vote for that particular amendment and bill with Republicans and Democrats. We were initially going to do a voice vote. That means that it would be aye, nay, and the ayes have it. But someone stood up and said, I want a roll call vote. There was trepidation. What would that mean? What kind of tension would be provoked? But here on the record of the United States House of Representatives, on this day, July 22nd, Republicans and Democrats affirmed the fact that Confederate officers were committed treason, and that those who denied us our humanity and what human rights we had did not deserve the honor to be in the United States House of Representatives. That is an action item that children for generations to come will no longer have to be confronted by those who were treasonous but wanted to ensure that slaves were not human and remain enslaved. From that comes pathways of other opportunities. It is important to take note of the fact that SORAs and even your status under the IRS code allows you to engage in policy. So I'm glad you asked this question. What you would be advocating for is not politics. You can jump feet first in the numbers of legislative issues that we have. We know that the Commission to Study Boys and Men by Frederica Wilson will be on the floor of the House next week. And we expect success. We also expect the Commission on Girls and Women, all of which I am a co-sponsor and support enthusiastically. Jump in immediately to support. But I need you to support an age-old initiative from 1989 that has now risen to a pinnacle in the light of the heinous acts against Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, whose family are my constituents. That is HR 40, the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals, something that we as African Americans, the descendants of enslaved Africans, have stepped away from. For all of the academicians, this is a time to step up. For all of the SORAs, this is a time to step up, because you will find that this is, very briefly, a governmental commission that deals with the governmental installing of slavery. And finally, let me say, and so encourage your members of Congress who happen not to be Congressional Black Caucus members, remember I said policy, not politics, to support HR 40, an action-oriented commission that will dig deep into the lack of wealth transfer, the disparities. That's one of my major issues, the disparities amongst African Americans, even in the 21st century. You'll find it across the board, as my dear colleague, Congresswoman Underwood, in health, in the environment, in education, in wealth. And then finally, we have taken almost 40 years to pass another significant, tragically, civil rights law, and that is the George Floyd Justice and Policing. You can look in your history books and know that police brutality, of which we do not condemn all law enforcement. I do believe in reimagining police and funding community groups, as our legislation does, to reimagine police as public safety and working with the community. But in the 1990s, Davio Diallo was killed in the dark hallway in a Bronx tenement. Shot with many bullets, thought to have had a gun, he did not. So we've been fighting this cause. Now you have the ability to have a revisiting of qualified immunity in this bill that does not deny law enforcement officers their rights. It allows expanded rights in the courtroom, because the judge will decide whether or not the victim is completely thrown out, as we say as lawyers, meaning that they do not prevail. But the judge will then know that they have rights to be heard. Were their rights denied? That's what the modification in the Justice and Policing Act, named after George Floyd, the end of no-knock drug raids that killed a wonderful, beautiful EMT perspective person and nurse in Breonna Taylor, and a humble giant, Big Floyd as he was called, who we saw saying, "I can't breathe" because of the chokehold. SORAs, you can be engaged in public policy. You can be engaged in stomping out disparities amongst the descendants of enslaved Africans. You can be engaged in a reparations legislative initiative that deals with a federal commission that speaks to what the government did, not knocking on your neighbor's door and asking for compensation, but letting the government be part of the solution to end for all time systemic racism. So I believe you can do it in a way that fits very squarely in the leadership that you give to these issues. Let me conclude by saying no one disagrees with the elder stateswoman, which is the Honorable Eddie Bernice Johnson. But I want to keep on the minds of my SORAs. It is time to lead. The fierceness of now. You can lead in any aspect of government, from Congress to the Senate, to cabinet, to sub-cabinet. Just think of Black women in the United States government making decisions on health and human services, on the environment, on the Department of Justice, on the issues of the Treasury. Let us be reminded that the seat at the table has many chairs.
Thank you so very much. Representative Lee, you know how to put a button on a question. The next question comes from Mary Bentley Lamar, the North Atlantic Regional Director, and that is for Representative Alma Adams from the North Carolina 12th District.
Good evening, and thank you all for your service. The assaults on our democracy are relentless. Babies detained in cages, peaceful protesters thrown into unmarked vans by paramilitary police, our people brutalized and even killed by those we have entrusted to protect us. What concrete steps can the federal government do that you think will be most effective in turning this situation around? And how can we help you in your role to effectuate that change?
Thank you, Sarah, for your question. Listen, we are living in unprecedented times, witnessing a level of cruelty and heartlessness coming directly out of the White House. But right now, we're in a battle for the soul of our democracy. And it's pretty clear to me that we need to clean house or fumigate it, like Speaker Pelosi said. It's about making sure that we make a difference and that we are involved in the policy making by making sure that we are involved in those who make policy. I've always said that you don't change policy until you change policymakers, or certainly change their minds, so that what we need to do and what we all need to do is to ensure that those policies work to the advantage of our communities, our children, and so forth. But however, despite the policies coming out of the White House, and there's still things that the federal government, and more specifically Congress, can do to address the pervasive racism and economic inequality that our society has allowed to fester. So these are not new things. That when we see this pandemic and all of the injustice that it has revealed and all of the inequities. But there's some concrete steps I think we can take. First of all, we need to, and I think Congresswoman Jackson Lee so eloquently said it, we've got to pass the Justice and Policing Act. I mean, all the way through, so that it does become law. We've certainly passed it out of the House. We've got to pass comprehensive immigration reform because of the inhumane treatment of our fellow brothers and sisters and at the border. It's absolutely inhumane. And it's not only when we do that will we protect our DACA recipients, but it also helps the 11 million people who are living in the shadows and the children and families that are being kept in cages. We also need to pass the Protest Act, the Right to Protest Act. That's a bill that I sponsored that would prohibit the use of tear gas and other kinds of chemical agents that have been used against peaceful protesters. We are by Constitution allowed to protest peacefully. The Voting Rights Act, we can't say enough about that and the passage that we need to accomplish there. The HEROES Act, which is right now sitting with 200 or 300 other bills in the Senate. It invests $3 trillion into our communities, into our health systems, our schools, small business. It makes investments in our voting infrastructure and election security. It provides relief to homeowners and renters and students and so forth. And then we have to continue to have the oversight and conduct the oversight that we need. So I think if we're able to do these things, I think we're going to be able to see some results, because the inequity that we see today is a direct result of federal policies. And as Congresswoman Jackson Lee has said, as SOROs, we can engage in policy. That's a lot different than other things, but we certainly need to do that, because policy is what shapes what we can do and what we cannot do. So thank you so much for your question.
Thank you very much, Representative Alma Adams. Our next question comes from Joy Elaine Daly, our International Regional Director, and that question is to Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman from New Jersey.
Good evening, and thank you to such august group of congressional women and for the wealth of information that you've been sharing with us this evening. Special greetings to Senator Harris, not only from the land of pink and green, but from the land of black, green, and gold. And you know what that means. Because of the economic circumstances caused by the pandemic, including loss of jobs and lack of summer employment, many students will be unable to contribute financially to their college education. What is being done to ensure that students entering college this fall will be able to enroll in college and that returning students will be able to continue their college education?
Thank you, Sora, for that question. That is such an important question for our young people, our future. And I don't have a really good answer for you. There are lots of, there's been an increase in the Pell Grants, of course. There are a number of legislative initiatives to make college debt-free college education or make college education more affordable, some of which have already been undertaken in committees, but we've not passed any of it yet. I don't know that the stimulus check is going to be a bit of help if we ever get to it, because college students who were not eligible the first time under the HEROES Act will not only be eligible this time, but I think they may even get the retroactive check, and that certainly will be helpful, but that's not enough. If it's $2,000 or $4,000 collectively, that's not enough. We've got these initiatives that have been under consideration to make either college debt-free, to make community college debt-free, or to make it more affordable by incentivizing states. We've got lots of ideas, but we need those ideas to crystallize into legislation, be passed, and then be signed into law, which is where the 300,000 voices of the AKAs around the country are so vitally important, because these are initiatives that all people aren't comfortable with, because they think it's a bit of a handout. But we know that it is a bit of a lift up, and that we know that non-minorities have had a lift up for generations. And now is the time that we need to ensure that our young people have access to education. But it depends upon what we can get passed. And so in terms of what's going to happen in September, I know that the Coronavirus Act, I think it's CARES, to put money in for institutions to try to help them to be able to make it through this pandemic. I know that there's money in the HEROES Act, which was passed in May, but by the House, but is languishing in the Senate. That could be helpful. But I don't have a solution to the immediate problem. We have to make sure that we are supporting those who share our values when it comes time to placing them in positions, because this is an issue that has been ignored far too long.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. We really do appreciate your help and your answer to that question. Our next question comes from Jennifer King Congleton, Mid-Atlantic Regional Director. I'm sorry. Our next question comes from Twyla Woods Buford, the Midwestern Regional Director, who is going to ask her question to Representative Terry Sewell. Twyla.
Good evening. First, I'd like to express my gratitude to each of you for sharing your time, your information, and mostly your motivation to all of us. As you know, not everyone wants to sit at the table. but we all understand the importance of having representation in boardrooms, the halls of Congress, in school board meetings, and other institutions. What strategies or general advice can you offer to those who want to provide that extremely much needed support to assist others in reaching their elective goals?
Well, very good question, Soror. You know, the Alpha Kappa Alpha, aka Connection, has always been a vehicle for expressing Alpha Kappa Alpha's women's interests in policy and in making sure that our values are reflected in electoral politics. I want to say that you don't always have to be the elected person, but government affects all of our lives. There's nothing that government does not affect. And so I think the key is for us to be civically engaged. And that engagement can happen lots of ways. First and foremost, we can make sure that we're voting in every election. Every election has consequences. And so making sure that we vote is critically important. Civic engagement also means making sure that you're filling out your census form. The census determines so many, how your resources are spent in your communities and how you get those resources. And thirdly, we have to remember that we're stronger together. You may be one vote, but if you're getting others to come out and vote as well, you're influencing politics. And so the old adage that you don't just go to the poll yourself, you bring others to the poll is critically important. And during this pandemic, it means that you're making sure that every voter has a plan, as Frederica Wilson would say, to vote at home. We are indeed safer voting at home. But every state has different rules and regulations as to how one goes about absentee balloting, right? The state of Alabama, for example, has a very arduous process. So until we can actually get the Voting Rights Act restored and the full protections back, I think everyone has to have a voting plan. You need to know, you have to be your own best health advocate and have a voting plan. Know how to vote by mail or vote at home in your state, if that's absentee balloting. Understand the deadlines and meet those deadlines. Also, we're seeing that a lot of states, because there's no federal oversight, a lot of states are closing down polling locations or consolidating polling locations. We saw that in Kentucky. Long lines are wrapped around the polls. People people out there at 6 o'clock desperate to get in to vote. So you have to have a plan to vote, which is critically important. And I think that you have to remain civically engaged. That is a key. Also, you have to help others get elected. Your vote is your voice, and make sure your voice is counted. You can make sure that you are electing people that express your values, and you can do that by a myriad of ways. Yes, all of us need financial support to run for office, but we also need others out there to spread the word and amplify our voice on social media. So you can make sure that you are emailing your friends, that you are liking various folks on social media, and that you are giving to campaigns that actually express your values. Also, you can make sure that the people that you're electing actually vote on issues that you care about. If it's HBCUs, make sure that you're electing people who are going to not only promote HBCUs, but actually get more resources and money for HBCUs as well. So there are lots of ways that for you to have a seat at the table. You don't physically have to be in those rooms, but you want to make sure that you're electing women, especially Alpha Kappa Alpha women, who are going to be at that table and amplify your voice at that table. So let's make sure that you're civically engaged. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Sewell. We certainly do appreciate your time today. Our next question comes from Jennifer King Congleton, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Director, and that is for Representative Frederica Wilson.
Thank you, and
Jennifer.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for all that you do for us each and every day. My hat's off to each of you. Alpha Kappa Alpha's COVID-19 Pandemic Task Force and National Legislative Agenda includes healthcare as a key priority. What actions have Congress and the Congressional Black Caucus taken to address healthcare disparities, which continue to plague the African American and underserved communities and have contributed to the disproportionate mortality rate resulting from COVID-19?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. And I want you to know that the Congressional Black Caucus was very instrumental in putting forward the CARES 1 and CARES 2. And I had, from my perch as chairwoman of the Health, Employment, Labor, and Pensions Committee, I sponsored the legislation to make and guarantee that COVID-19 testing for all people was free. It prohibits insurance companies for charging people. So if you're listening and someone tries to charge you for a COVID-19 test, call me, because it's supposed to be free. And we worked and we put all kinds of things in it to incentivize our Republican governors to expand Medicaid. And I happen to be from a state whose governor will not expand Medicaid. So we're working real hard to do that. When I was in the state legislature, I had the opportunity to build a clinic in Little Haiti. Since I've been in Congress, I had the opportunity to build a family health center in Liberty City, and it's named after me. So what I do is I fight real hard, or I fought real hard to put millions of dollars into CARES 1, CARES 2, and the HEROES Act, which has not been passed, for our family health centers. These are centers that sit in communities, and people who receive care there can actually walk to the center to get their care. I'm in the process of trying to expand the last one that I built in Liberty City to include a whole pediatric unit, especially with pediatric dentistry. So in my district, I have a pharmaceutical firm, and they specialize in dialysis medication. So I was able to work with, and you know who's on dialysis is people who look like us. So I was able to work with them to get them through the process so that the medication that they are developing can help people who have COVID-19 who are on dialysis. And all of these family health centers that I'm talking to you about, they have been able to offer to our people testing, walk-up testing, drive-up testing, testing for children, young children. We've had a spike of young children with COVID-19. So we also have been giving tons of money to help HIV and AIDS people who, if they contract COVID-19, they will probably pass away. So we have a whole section in our CARES 1 and CARES 2 to address HIV and AIDS. And we have to remember the one thing that helps with African Americans and the disparities is primary health care. So in our CARES 1 and CARES 2, we have a telemed where even if you don't have a car, you can't get out, you are sheltered in place, you can visit the doctor on a computer. Your grandchildren can help you do it. You can make that available. And we also make sure that in our underserved communities in Miami, I'm just going to give you an example. We have a mask thing in place. You have to wear a mask. So they put, if you don't wear a mask, they will give you a citation for the first time. And the second time, they will give you a $100 fine. So, I had to fight because I said, these people don't have a mask because they can't afford a mask. And I saw a man, as I was speaking, with the dirtiest mask I've ever seen. So I've worked out a plan with the police departments in my county to, before you try to give someone a $100 fine or arrest them, offer them a mask so that they can wear a mask. And I have a mandatory mask for all bill that I filed because I believe that everyone should wear a mask. And the mask that we have gotten in our offices on my radio show, I say to people, if you need a mask, come to my office because we're handing out masks, gloves, and sanitizers, and encouraging people to wash their hands. Stay at home, especially these young people. If you cannot stay at home, then when you leave your home, wear a mask. So, you know, I'm in the heart of the pandemic, and we're working so hard to arrest this COVID-19 because it is killing Black people. I know so many Black families where the whole household has COVID-19. Some are critical, some are not as critical. And the one thing I say about COVID-19 is this is a disease that no one can predict. If you have the flu, you know you're gonna have chills, fever, they're gonna give you some Theraflu, you're gonna drink orange juice and you're gonna go to bed. When COVID-19 knocks on your door and knocks on your body, there's no telling what will happen. Each case is different. So we have to test, and testing is so important. And then if you have COVID-19, we have to contact trace and make sure that everyone in the household doesn't have it. So in Miami and across this nation, we have in CARES 1 and CARES 2 money for cities to put people in hotels. And the mayor said to me the other day that African-American people are not taking advantage of this. So I'm saying to everyone, if you have to quarantine yourself, when you get tested and you test positive, call your mayor, call the 911 or the 311 or whatever emergency number you have in your city, because you don't necessarily have to go home and quarantine and infect everyone in your household. You can, in fact, shelter in a hotel and they feed you. And we were able to double the food stamps for everyone. In fact, in Florida, I was able to get the EBT stamps. I don't know if that's everywhere, but in Florida, we have it where people can use their actual food. It's not a food stamp, it's a card now. So I'm dating myself. This card that they can get buy cooked food. You can get a rotisserie chicken from Publix. You can get food from whatever at the deli. So, you know, we have different grocery stores that sell cooked food. So this not only preserves the electricity for people, it's hot now, the electric bills are high. And so all of these things the Congressional Black Caucus worked on to put in CARES 1, CARES 2, and what we're fighting for real hard right now is to pass the HEROES Act, which has the bulk of the money for our states. And you know, states have to balance their budgets, and when they can't balance their budgets, the first thing they do is cut education. So we have to get the money to the states and to the counties so they won't cut education, so they won't cut hospitals, they won't cut public safety, they won't cut the things that we need, transportation, et cetera. So we've worked very, very hard, very hard. Everyone on this panel has worked very hard in making sure that the disparate, you know, we brought it up so many times that in the second CARES, there's a special section, you could say, for African Americans. We made sure of that. In the HEROES Act, there's a special section for African Americans. We fought, each and every one of us fought to make that a point. Thank you, and I yield back. And remember, I'm Congresswoman Frederica Vote From Home Wilson.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Frederica Vote From Home Wilson, and for your leadership in more ways than I will ever be able to say. Our final question is going to come from Carolyn G. Randolph, the South Atlantic Regional Director, to Congresswoman Lauren Underwood.
Good evening. I certainly voice the sentiment of my colleagues, and as Congresswoman Frederica Vote From Home say, my pride is showing as a Black woman and as a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. My question is to you, Congresswoman Underwood, what are you doing to ensure women between the ages of 25 to 40 have a seat at the table of leadership, power, and influence? What model can you give them from step one to step, of election to have a seat at the table?
I love that question, and thank you for raising this. So at baseline, we have to vote. We have to vote. Voting is where we start. So in this election, Congresswoman Wilson teed it up perfectly. We are going to be voting from home this election. That is the safest, most secure way for us to be able to cast our ballots in 2020. In many states, you can already request your application to vote from home right now. And you should already be making a plan, investigating the candidates that will be on your ballot so that when you receive that ballot, you are confident in your selections and you mail it off right away. We don't want people putting their ballot down. We don't want it getting lost in a stack of papers, accidentally recycled. No, we want you to receive that ballot, fill it out, and mail it back. In many states, you won't even have to find a postage stamp. And so, we know that that is so important. But beyond voting, in your communities, at the municipal level, at the county level, there are many opportunities to serve on advisory boards. Your mayor, your county board member, your governor has many vacancies that seek community input. And so we need to be applying to serve on those boards and commissions. I have to tell you, when I was 16 years old in my hometown of Naperville, Illinois, I got a one-year appointment to my town's Fair Housing Commission. And my community had this reputation of being very nice and welcoming and comfortable to everyone. And as soon as I got onto that commission, I learned about discrimination that was occurring in our rental apartment community. And there are so few rental apartment units that was hidden from most of the community members. And so as we started reading these reports of discrimination allegations, we were able to advise City Council on how to change our community ordinances to live up to these goals and ideals that we had already claimed that we were meeting, right? That kind of involvement involves something as simple as an application. You don't have to be like a donor. You don't have to be politically connected. You just have to care and seek out those opportunities to serve. As you go up in the ladder of government, if you will, and you're seeking appointments maybe from your governor to a job or role, that's a great way for all of us to serve. These kinds of positions are looking for professionals, professional women of color that represent the diversity of all of our communities. And we need to be part of each of those applicant pools, no matter what state we live in. And we are in an election year. And if we elect a new president in this country, he will have to fill his administration with talented, committed, smart people. And so we should be applying for those roles. I mean, there are many opportunities to serve our communities and our countries in this time. Public service is something that can happen in your free time, or it could be your career. But what we want to do is invite the women of Alpha Kappa Alpha to be participating in our government, in our communities, in our efforts to serve all mankind. It is critically important. This is not the time to sit back, because literally, if we don't step forward, someone else will be raising their voice and likely doesn't share our values, doesn't care about our kids, doesn't care about our communities, and are not going to route the resources our way. That is why we have to be at these decision-making tables. And we are more than enough. You have all the skills, you have all the credentials that you need. We just need you to apply. And listen, the AKA delegation in the United States Congress, we have your back. So don't feel like you're in this effort alone. We're here for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Lauren Underwood. I have to tell you, Congresswoman Underwood, you call to all of the officers of Alpha Kappa Alpha. Our town hall is just about over. I hope you enjoyed this virtual meeting, but I'd like us to say a special thank you to Dr. Glenda Glover for her vision and, of course, her support. None of this would have been possible without your leadership. Dr. Glover, welcome back to give us some closing remarks.
Thank you. Wow. What an amazing evening this has been. When I envisioned the platform to showcase our AKA congressional delegation, I knew I had to find a way to make this happen, and we did. Thank you so much, Star Jones. You are just awesome. You are just simply awesome. This is such a proud moment for all of us who proudly wear pink and green. And to all others who are sharing with us tonight, thank you very much. To our AKA delegation, I thank you. I tell you, I sent a text message to the 7 members of Congress and asked them to participate in this forum, in this town hall. And within an hour, 6 had already responded with a positive, just saying, yes, I'll do it. That's the kind of service they render to the sorority and to the public. So they are public servants in the truest sense. So thank you very much. And to the members of Alpha Kappa Alpha and to all the others who tuned in, we appreciate your support. And I say to each of you, we will continue to leverage our collective power as we take our seat at the table, as we remain at that table, as we move to the head of the table. So thank you again. Thank you very much. And let's have a good evening and be safe.
Thank you so much, Dr. Glover. Tonight was, in a word, phenomenal. The excellence of our members who are leaders of this nation was on full display. And there's no doubt that Black women can do anything. We've proven that time and time again, because in the words of our beloved member, Maya Angelou, there is a kind of, it's as if a steel rod runs right through our head down to our feet. I've been a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha for 40 years, and this evening has been another example why I'm so honored to call you all my sisters. I thank you for joining us, and I wish you a great evening. Good night, everyone.